We're gonna begin today with a closer look at one of this country's most well-known media outlets, National Public Radio. Now, for years and years, NPR news and programs are funded in part by the government and in part by listeners, those who call in and pledge money, and those who give big donations. Now, over the recent years, it has been more and more common to hear the names of sponsors on NPR. And it turns out there are even certain programs sponsored entirely by one company that may or may not influence the content of the program. Now let's take a look today at one financial program, Planet Money, hosted by Adam Davidson. When you click on to listen, you're likely to hear this.
Support for Planet Money comes from Ally Bank. NPR keeps people in the know, so does Ally. Customers can talk to a real person any time of day or night. Learn more at allybank.com.
Well, as it turns out, Ally Bank has, among other things, spent quite a bit of money lobbying against the creation of what is now the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So it's no surprise then that when Planet Money host Adam Davidson had the head of CFPB, Elizabeth Warren, on for an interview, things got a little heated. Take a listen.
This crisis will not be over until the American family begins to recover. This crisis does not exist independently.
Your crisis.
No, it is not my crisis. That is America's crisis. If people cannot pay their credit card bills, if they cannot pay their mortgages.
But you are not in the mainstream of views on this issue.
This, of course, just a snippet from the 15-plus minute interview. But we want to talk today with two journalists who allege this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to questionable practices by Adam Davidson and the Planet Money team. Mark Ames and Yasha Levine are the founders of the website Shame, or Shame on the Hacks That Abuse Media Ethics. Mark is here with me in Washington as Yasha is in our studios in Los Angeles. Mark, let me start with you, and we will get to some of the other things in a moment, but let's just talk specifically about this interview. Definitely at several points in the interview got very fiery, but why couldn't this just be Adam Davidson doing his job, you know, asking tough questions like journalists are supposed to?
Here's the thing. When this interview happened, people were shocked. Nobody understood, because you assume Adam Davidson is sort of this gee whiz, dweeby, guy just trying to discover what's going on just as much as the next person. Nobody knew that the sole funder of his sole funder, the guy who was paying him his money, was Ally Bank, which is GMAC, which was one of the poster child banks of fraud, subprime fraud, foreclosure fraud. It got over $17 billion in bailout money, and it had just arranged a deal with Planet Money to be their sole and exclusive sponsor, and this wasn't disclosed. And at the same time that Davidson attacked Elizabeth Warren, Ally Bank was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars here in Washington lobbying to kill what Warren was trying to set up, which is a Consumer Protection Agency.
And as we know, it's not just sort of the sponsor of this program. Yasha, I want to go to you now and have you talk about some of the paid speaking engagements Davidson did. Who were they for, and what's the big deal?
Well, yeah, we don't know the full story, but just some of the information that could be gleaned from public information. He's done a handful of speaking engagements over the past 2 years, speaking at conferences and events sponsored and funded by some of the biggest banks in the world. I'm talking about, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, of course, Goldman Sachs. And in particular, the most recent ones were about micro lending and microfinance, but it doesn't really matter because this is a corporate speaking gigs. Usually they're paid and pretty well paid. We don't know how much he was paid for them because Davidson refuses to disclose that information, and so does NPR. NPR won't provide it. But we do know that he has appeared at multiple events sponsored by the Wall Street and the banking industry, and he was presumably paid for them.
But Yasha, we didn't mention, but Adam Davidson also contributes to the New York Times Magazine at times, and both the New York Times and NPR have very strict policies about accepting paid speaking engagements. And I know both have been questioned about this, I believe by The Observer, and both have responded that he is not going against any company policy. So why then should people be concerned?
Well, we don't know what standard they use to arrive at that conclusion. You know, just from the information that we were able to gather and find, the evidence is pretty damning and shows that there is some conflict of interest there. Now, but they won't release any information at all about the nature of the speaking engagements that Davidson did. How much was he paid? What were the terms? And so they're not being transparent about the information about the process that they used to arrive at that conclusion that everything is okay. We're supposed to trust them, but to be honest, there's not much trust. You can't really have much trust in them when they've shown to be not engaging in good faith.
Mark,
I just wanted to add to what Yasha said. On top of it, it's not just that he's taking this money, but it's also that he is promoting their positions. He's promoting an extreme right-wing neoliberal agenda over and over. He writes that we need to squeeze the middle class. He writes that we should basically worship Wall Street. That everything that has made us happy in this world came from Wall Street. He literally wrote that in the New York Times. He's been promoting sweatshop labor. He's been promoting like all kinds of crazy schemes, and at the same time taking money from these guys. So the real problem is when you're taking money from these people covertly, and then promoting their agenda on NPR, you're essentially a product spokesman. And Davidson is a product spokesman, but we haven't been disclosed that fact. And I should also add that Chicago Public Media, which is the public corporation that is a partner in this, has a specific policy that journalists should not take money from the subjects that they report on. And he takes money from the subjects he reports on, and he reports positively on them, and he promotes their agenda. So it is a violation. They didn't say it's not a violation. They just basically said no comment. They took the fifth.
Let me ask you, Yasha. I mean, let's take this a little broader. As much as we like to think of journalism, I certainly do, as sort of a higher calling, a fourth estate. In many cases, it is still a business, and that requires advertisers. So how do you propose there be a better balance between keeping a journalistic outlet afloat and keeping it honest?
Well, this is not about even advertisers. I mean, having advertisers and hopefully have a diverse set of advertisers, so you're not too conflicted on any issue, and if there is conflict, you disclose that fact to your readers openly, and you release information about how much your publication or the person or the show is receiving from the sponsor. If you're going to be reporting on the same on issues that affect that sponsor's bottom line. But the problem with Davidson and a lot of other journalists who are engage in similar sort of have a similar business plan, I guess, for their journalism career. It's not about advertisers. It's really about covert payments that you receive from the industries that you report on. This is just, I'm talking about speaking fees. And then the other aspect is Planet Money. Ally Bank is not just an advertiser. It is its sole exclusive sponsor. So, meaning that all the funding that Ally Bank gets or most of it to stay on the air and to produce its shows comes from this one bank.
And we should say that Planet Money is not the only place that this goes on, but I know that you guys have recently written about this. Mark, talk about the Shame Project. How do you guys decide, who to focus on?
We have discussions between ourselves and with other journalists that work with us, sort of that provide help to us. And I wouldn't say there's not like a strict objective standard. It's sort of. Would
you say this is becoming more and more common that this goes on?
Oh no, there's no doubt. I mean, look, Columbia Journalism School did a study that. The ratio of PR people to journalists in 1980 was about 1-to-1, and now it's about 4-to-1. Actually, now it's probably a lot worse because 4-to-1 was in 2008, and the journalism profession. And that doesn't include all the Malcolm Gladwells and Adam Davidsons and all these basically covert product spokesmen that are fronting as journalists. So, look, this makes it hard for us to do our jobs when we're trying to do real journalism because these people act as trolls, just like Adam Davidson. When you listen to what he did to Elizabeth Warren, now if everybody knew that he was being paid by Ally Bank that would have ended it. There would have been no question.
Yeah,
the
and I
reason
think we
why
put
he
it
did
on the
that.
screen. That was from 2009.
That was from 2009. That was great.
And
That-
this is sort of just coming out.
Exactly.
now.
It's just coming out now, 3 years later. Now, there were a few people that complained at the time, and as usual, the ombudsman said, the ombudsman called these people cynical, right? You know, so they have no argument. It's obviously corrupt. There is no excuse for it whatsoever. So you just impugn the the intentions of the accuser.
Yasha, we're almost out of time. Let me just end really quick with you. And for journalists, I mean, is making money off a story, you think it's the ultimate ethical issue?
No. Well, of course, everyone has to make a living, but no, it's not the ultimate goal. You know, you don't go into journalism to make a fortune. That's definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly an issue, though, as we see.
You go into journalism to fight power.
Right, and not
That's
to
it.
Exactly.
get into bed
Not
with
to
them,
suck
right?
up to them. Yeah.
All right. Well, really good to talk to both of you. Shame website founders Mark Ames and Yasha Levine. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks.